Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is the Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're kicking off our Melissa Mathison series with a 1979 horse swimmer, the Black Stallion. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you're a regular listener of the show and you're interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page at patreon.com/thenextreel.
Please do that. There are lots of great things that you get when you do that. Like, first and foremost, join us on the Slack group. We'd love to talk to you with. And then you can hear the show early when I get it done early. Probably a bad week for me to tout that.
Probably.
Sorry, everybody, for it being 4 days late last week. But that rarely happens, you have to admit.
It's like twice it's happened in 5 years, so.
It's a bad week. Anyway, with that, everybody, let's do trailers. Andy, what is the deal? Now, I mean this. What is the deal with Tom Cruise?
He is a robot.
He is Benjamin Buttoning. Tom Cruise is Benjamin Buttoning just through life. He is getting younger with every movie he makes. I don't get it. It makes me feel old. I'm breathing hard just talking about him.
I don't know what magic potions he's drinking, but he's clearly made a pact with something.
Seriously. I am talking this week about American Made, and I'm going to say something out loud. I'm a fan, perhaps guiltily, certainly pleasurably, of Air America. I don't know, I can't explain it, but there was something about that movie. Robert Downey Jr., Mel Gibson, I super connected with that film, and I don't know, I just love the idea of these renegade pilots running illicit goods on behalf of the government. I'm not in favor of it politically, but I love movies about it. That's what this movie is, Andy. American Made. Tom Cruise stars in this film written by Gary Spinelli, directed by Doug Liman, and it is all about a pilot who lands work. Do you see what IMDb did there? For the CIA as a drug runner in the South during the 1980s. I think this trailer has an incredible amount of energy. It is exciting. He lands a plane in a neighborhood, and Tom Cruise riding a kid's BMX bike covered in cocaine. I'll show up for that scene alone. Also stars Caleb Landry Jones, Jesse Plemons, Sarah Wright, Domhnall Gleeson, Gemma Mays. So many great people. Connor Trinier is in this movie as George W. Bush. Connor Trinier, Andy. Anything?
Should I remember him?
Yes, you should, because he was Charles Trip Tucker III in Star Trek Enterprise, which was so... Shut up. It was so unfairly canceled after only 3 seasons, and so he is back. He's actually been working quite a bit. But I imagine that he has been sitting alone waiting for the call to play George W. Bush for this movie with Tom Cruise. Anyhow, I am really looking forward to this movie. I didn't know anything about it until we were filling out our spreadsheet for movies that we're going to talk about at the Film Board in the second half of the year. And now I'm excited for this one. What'd you think?
Oh, yeah, I've been excited. I mean, you know me, I'm the guy who did a deep dive into Cruise's filmography and watched every single film of his because I think he's a really compelling performer. I think that he's always investing so much of himself on screen. And regardless of what you think of him outside of the movie world, I find him a really fun person to watch on screen. And so I definitely want to watch this. I think he is an interesting actor choice to play this character. I haven't seen him do something quite like this, so it's going to be exciting. And with him and Doug Liman knowing what they've done together and just other things they've both done in the past, I'm definitely in and excited for this one. So yes, sir. Count me in.
Well, you can be counted in late August if you're in Hungary, Andy. And from then, if you travel through the Netherlands, Bulgaria, Australia, late August, all the way to Portugal, you can see it before it arrives in the U.S. Even in Germany and Greece, Andy, September 7th. France, September 13th. Argentina, September 28th, Andy, if you really want to see this and get your Tom Cruise on early before the rest of us here. And then you could see it on September 29th. That's when it comes here. And the Ouch. the Russians are being snubbed. They don't get it until October 12th. I am sorry, comrades. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
If this isn't a sign of the times, Andy, I don't know what is. The Russians are getting release windows pushed by a week and a half. What's yours?
Whoa, so much to read into this particular trailer release. Amazing. Well, Pete, speaking of potential paths our future could take, my trailer is What Happened to Monday?
What did happen to Monday, Andy?
This trailer, I had heard nothing about this film. It's directed by Tommy Wirkola, who, do you know our friend Tommy Wirkola, Pete?
Tell me about our friend Tommy Mercola.
Do you remember Hansel and Gretel witch hunters?
Oh, Tommy Mercola.
He also did Dead Snow and Dead Snow 2.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So he is now helming this film, which it sounds like just such a fascinating sci-fi concept, and I love everything about it. I love what I see in the trailer. It's a great sci-fi world. The IMDb plot sums it up. In a world where families are limited to one child due to overpopulation, a set of identical septuplets must avoid being put to a long sleep by the government and dangerous infighting while investigating the disappearance of one of their own. The disappearance of one of their own, you're getting that referencing from the title because the father, played by the wonderful Willem Dafoe, names his 7 daughters, all played by Noomi Rapace once they're of age. He names them all from the day of the week. And that's the one day of the week that they get to be the one who goes outside posing as his one daughter. And there's this one time where Monday happens to go out and she doesn't come back. And so Tuesday through Sunday now try to figure out what happened to Monday and try to decide, should they go out and see if they can find her, or is that going to put them all in jeopardy, or what? Super interesting. And Glenn Close is in it. Apparently Robert Wagner is in it. I love just the vibe of this, just the sci-fi world it creates here. It's just fascinating, and I hope that it holds up, because some of the stuff that Mercola has done might not be what you would call great cinema. You might call it fun cinema. I hope this is fun, but I do also hope it's great. What did you think?
Well, I'm a huge Orphan Black fan, and that's the vibe that I get out of this film. And I spend most of the season wishing that I could see Tatiana Maslany playing, clones in more things. And so I found myself really intrigued by this. I think Noomi Rapace is terrific, though, I've seen some questionable trailers of late, and so I think she's really great and maybe not making great choices. And so I worry about this. However, the trailer looks great. The atmosphere looks great in terms of the splash of world building that we get through, art and production design in the trailer. I think it feels really good. And Willem Dafoe, awesome. Glenn Close, really. What's going on with Glenn Close? Because it seems like she's on a string of movies where she plays kind of the maniacal political leader.
I don't know. I just love Glenn Close in anything that she does. So I'm excited to see her popping up in these types of sci-fi films that I never would have expected her to be in, like the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Or what was the one, the girl with all the gifts?
Yep. Well, that was a different thing, though. That was different. She wasn't no. I love seeing her in there, but this is a certain kind of role for her, and I feel like I've seen her. The shots that we get in the trailer, I've seen her do before under movies of different titles. You can't say the girl with all the gifts fits in that.
No, I'm just saying I love seeing her taking this step into like these types of sci-fi films that I haven't seen before. Yeah. So I welcome it, regardless of whether she's playing the types of antagonists that she has before.
Well, it certainly looks like she's having a lot of fun, choosing roles at this point in her career, and I love that. I think that's great.
Yes.
So more power to her. Anyway, I'm guardedly excited about this movie. It fills a clone-shaped hole in my heart.
Well, right now, unfortunately, the only release dates are France, August 23rd, and Greece, August 31st. The US and UK are listed as 2017, but it doesn't have any dates, and that's it for release dates. So hopefully things will get shaken out at some point, and we will be able to tell people when to see it. But otherwise, hopefully before the end of the year.
Maybe the black is blue today. Did you ever think of that, Andy?
If you want to believe in magic, in beauty, in friendship, and freedom, believe in the Black Stallion.
The biggest, the blackest, and the strongest, the most beautiful horse that ever was.
Francis Ford Coppola presents Walter Farley's timeless classic, Whose Time Has Come. The Black Stallion. The story of a legendary horse who could only be tamed by a young boy's love.
The Black Stallion, Andy, 1979. Directed by Carroll Ballard, written by Melissa Mathison, and this is based on the book by Walter Farley. It is a beautiful family story about a boy and his horse. What did you think of The Black Stallion?
This is a film, this and its sequel, The Black Stallion Returns, are two films that I kind of grew up with, and I just have such a special place in my heart for them. I just love them to pieces, and watching this film again with more adult eyes just really was exciting to see how artful it was and how patient it was, and just how much detail there was in the world building, and just the sense of place and time, and just the way the characters just kind of unfolded on screen. It was a really beautiful film, and I just completely fell in love with it.
I did too. It surprised me. First of all, just the level of patience in the film. I haven't seen it in many, many years, and my memory of it is that the opening sequence, the shipwreck and the island experience, is very short, and then it gets into the exciting horse race stuff. And it turns out that's not it at all. And there is a full 48, 49 minutes of the film. We're on that island, and we're experiencing that island, and it's nearly silent. And I found myself reflecting on Hayao Miyazaki and this concept of Ma that we've been talking about, because it feels so much like there is that level of peace and just sustaining energy in every brief clip, throughout these wonderful island sequences, where the horse and the boy are not in frame at all. And I just was, looking at it almost as a meditation. I thought it was just beautiful. And then we get into the character, portion of the film, and seeing Mickey Rooney it was a delight. And Hoyt Axton, come on, I wish we'd had a little bit more of him, just, because I adore him so much. And the same with Terry Garr, who, we can talk about her, just the way the character was written in the film, sort of curiously later, and the incredibly talented Kelly Reno playing the young boy, Alec Ramsey. All of these folks, I think, just delivered a wonderful portrait that didn't have to pull any, stunts to keep attention through the duration of the film. And that is the thing for me that I feel like I'm celebrating the most, that I watched it with my family, and not once did attention get pulled from the screen. They were drawn in to what was being painted before them, and they didn't need robots, and they didn't need transformers, and they didn't need superheroes and capes, and they didn't need gun battles or spaceships. They just wanted to see what happened with that horse. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
It's definitely something that Melissa Mathison as a writer has kind of tapped into. I mean, she's, between that and E.T. and Indian in the Cupboard and Kundun and the BFG, there's really something about her connection with young characters and kind of a magical element in their lives. And I think that says a lot about kind of the way she approaches story and what she was looking at, and perhaps how she helped adapt this book. You mentioned her, but also Gene Rosenberg and William D. Whitliff also were screenwriters on this. And I think Carroll Ballard and Walter Murch actually did the initial pass of it, but kind of got stuck. I think that there is a hint of kind of this magical realism kind of spread through this that just kind of touches on it here and there, and just kind of gives this nice sense of the way the story is unfolding. You don't necessarily see people doing things the way that you normally would think they would. And so to me, it just really seems like this is a story that really is a good example of taking a real point of view of a character, where we're really kind of in Alec's head through the duration of this film, and just kind of seeing things through his eyes, through a child's eyes, and kind of how things are in this world. Right from the start, we're getting so much of this, we're taking it in through point of view shots, through lower angle shots, kind of the kid's eye view and sort of stuff. And just of him looking at these little details and stuff. And you see this building over the course of the film as when his dad is relaying the story of Bucephalus, Alexander the Great's horse, and you get this great POV of Hoyt Axton looking directly into the camera as if he's talking to his son, telling him this story, and then shots of the kind of POV of him looking at the horse, and even into the end, these wonderful shots of him just kind of looking at the horse and looking at these details of these other riders and everything, and one that always strikes me as kind of the most perhaps magical realistic, I'm not sure what you call it, moment when the character of Snow, the African American on his with his white horse Napoleon, kind of rides up in the mist as Alec has fallen asleep on this hunt for Black, his horse, in town. And it's kind of this foggy morning, and Snow wakes him up and says, hey, what's up? And or what's wrong? And he's like, everything. And this interesting conversation, Snow somehow magically seems to know where the horse is and how to find it, and that this is the boy who's looking for it. I don't know why that is. I don't really fully understand it, but there's something really kind of interesting about it without having to hopefully fall into the magical Negro trope. I think that they kind of do a good job of avoiding that, where it just feels like there's this magical presence here. And it's just like, this is the little clue that he needed to find his horse. And I don't know, I really enjoy the way that all of that feels within the context of this film.
I do too, and to your point, that actually, it feels like a magical thing. But just after Alec and his mom pull away from Mickey Rooney's house, you see Snow and his horse pulling up to stable his horse at the same barn. So there's an answer there. Like, we know it wasn't magical. We know that Mickey Rooney had been there all night. We know that he had been trying to corral this horse, and when he finally got it corralled, like, the reason Snow knew that the horse was there is because his horse also lives at that barn. We see them together later, and I think that point is one I wanted to call out, because it's kind of hard to pull aside if you don't watch the movie a number of times. Like, that's one of those things where I feel like Mathison and team as sort of writing partners trust us to follow the story or to let go of just enough to enjoy the ride, and I think it's a sort of a sophisticated structure, and I really like it.
The element in there that I always question is, how does he know that Alec is the kid who's looking for that particular horse? The only thing that I can piece together is that there probably were stories in the paper about this kid who was found in the boat and the horse and all that. And so he probably pieced it together. So I agree. I think that there's a logic to how all of that could have played. And so again, that's probably why it's really not much of a problem for me.
But isn't it beautiful how the movie affects you? And I'll speak for myself, how it affects me as an adult watching it, when I remember my experience as a kid thinking, wow, I'll bet that guy really talks to his horse, his hat-wearing horse Napoleon. I'll bet that's how he knows, because horses are connected somehow. That must be what's going on. And as an adult, obviously I've let that go, and yet I still find it just, even as practically sort of pragmatic a structure as I manufacture in my own head, it's still kind of magical, even though I understand it. And so, I find it really touching. To your point about Melissa Mathison and her, the way she writes kids, I found myself thinking so much about her writing kids as heroes. The reason I was so compelled by these kids is because it was so easy at my age to put myself in their shoes and to think, okay, if I were on an island at this age, I'm sure I would do these things too. Just like my older self starts to read into what I would do if I were Han Solo or Indiana Jones, right? When I saw this movie as a, sub 10-year-old, I was fascinated by it because I could be him. He was a hero figure, Alec, that I could relate to more than any other. And that's what I connected to when I saw this movie, and that's my sense memory of it too, watching it today.
Yeah, I love seeing these movies where you really are focusing on a kid and a child who is really having these experiences. I think that it speaks a lot to adults who can tap into telling a story for kids that allows the story to be really for kids without feeling like it has to kind of talk down to them or change the story tone or the type of story in order to cater to the kids. This is a story that has some scary moments. It has death. It has near drowning. It has, isolation and loss and all that fear that goes along with it. But I think that kids are able to kind of connect with that. And I think so often stories kind of speak down to kids a little bit. And I think this is another reason why we enjoy Miyazaki so much, because he, I think, fits into this camp also, where you trust that kids can handle this sort of stuff, that they can go along for the ride. I mean, read some grim fairy tales, for Pete's sake. I mean, there are plenty of people dying in those things. I mean, they're kind of gory stories. I mean, they're horrifying. I mean, even going back to stuff like Pinocchio, I don't think a story has to be just something that speaks to the lowest common denominator as far as kids are concerned. I think allowing for just kind of a real story to happen and trusting that kids will go along with it says a lot. And being that hero kid that you're talking about in those types of stories, I think is makes it that much more engrossing. So I think that Melissa really knew how to tap into that with the story type of telling that she was doing.
You want to talk a little bit about her background and what brought her to center stage as a screenwriter?
Yeah, she is from the LA area. Her parents were from there. I think her dad was a journalist for the LA Times and then Newsweek. She started studying political science, but I guess sometime while she was studying, she was a babysitter for Francis Ford Coppola's friends and met him and got to know him. And then he offered her a chance to be an assistant on The Godfather Part 2. And she was just like, well, that sounds great. I get to come to set and bring coffee to Al Pacino. It's very exciting. It's not, some people think that's kind of dull, but here I am getting to go bring coffee to Al Pacino. So she jumped at the chance. And from there, she went on to Apocalypse Now with him. And that's where she ended up meeting Harrison Ford, who she ended up marrying in 1983. But before that, she, I guess I don't know exactly how the story happened, but Coppola had been kind of encouraging her to write. And I'm guessing it was while they were over in the Philippines filming Apocalypse Now, he asked her if she would come on board to help salvage the screenplay for the Black Stallion, and which he was producing through his company's American Zoetrope. And so she came on board and she said, we all agree the movie should be like a children's book with just pictures. That's when I learned to take out the words to tell the story visually, which is the best training there is. So she really, I think latched onto that element from working with Coppola and everything. But I guess she came back, and I don't know if she was the last writer on it. My understanding, like I said, is that Ballard, along with Walter Murch, started writing the script, and then she wrote with Gene Rosenberg. The two of them kind of co-wrote together, and then William Whitliff also came on to write. But his writing is much more Western oriented writing, so I'm wondering if like maybe his didn't work, and so they brought in Melissa and Gene to kind of, as Coppola said, to fix to salvage it. So anyway, it's I think her backstory is an interesting one, and just kind of how Coppola really was a big presence in film in the 70s. I mean, we'll talk about his relationship with Carroll Ballard here in a minute, but I think that he was kind of creating. I mean, he was really trying to create this incredible company that brought in artists from all walks of life to kind of come make their projects and find a home. And unfortunately, I think it was the mid-70s with the rise of the blockbuster and the corporate takeovers of the studios and everything that really kind of put the kibosh on that after Easy Rider and everything, and the kind of the 60s. It really kind of unfortunately started killing exactly what he was trying to set out to do, and it didn't work to the best way it could have. Plus, Coppola goes and makes these extravaganzas like Apocalypse Now that he spends pretty much everything that he has.
He's a financial roller coaster. This guy.
He is, really is. But I think that at least he was creating a a really interesting place for filmmakers to come and start working. And she wasn't really a writer yet, but I mean, there was enough encouragement from him for her to jump on and really do it. And I think that says a lot, that he tapped into something that he saw there and really brought it forth. So,
well, it's an amazing path that has been cut, just focusing on this, particular style of filmmaking. And I think it's quite beautiful. Let's talk just a little bit about Carroll Ballard and why they make such an interesting pairing when she comes on the scene to direct this film. This was his first film?
His first feature film. I mean, he had done films in school, and he had done a number of short films that I guess that he found it easier working with animals. So he did a film about cats. He did a film about pigs. He seemed to really kind of tap into animal stories, because it sounded like he was a little nervous about jumping into the world of actors and everything. But and you can certainly see that in his films, because he's tapped into stories about people and their relationships with animals.
And certainly here, I mean, devoting as much just straight up screen time. If you look at efficiency of story, this movie fails because there is an awful lot that you could cut in the first 45 minutes and just get to the narrative. And I think that's something that other directors would have done. And I love that he has the patience to have done this. I mean, you can see it. I don't know that I have a sense memory of the same kind of a split in movies like Fly Away Home, but you absolutely get that in Never Cry Wolf. I mean, Never Cry Wolf is like the whole movie is this same sort of sense of celebrating the landscape and the animals.
I remember that. I feel like I remember that from Fly Away Home, because there's so much of that with the geese and the girl's relationship with the geese, and training them and helping, learning to fly in the little flyer machine, and then teaching them to fly. And there's just a lot of that sort of footage, and it was beautiful. I mean, that was another beautiful film that also he, Carroll Ballard has the same sense, kind of like Melissa, about not feeling like you need to hold back on telling stories with some potentially difficult moments for kids.
Yeah, truly. I think that's to just shine light on it and really examine and at least explore what kids are okay, what kids have inside of themselves.
And Ballard also, when he learned that Coppola was getting this book and adapting it and looking at it himself, somebody had brought to his attention this whole story of Bucephalus, this horse that Alexander the Great tamed and rode out of the arena. And it's a fantastic little moment in the film. And I think it became, for him, very iconic and a very integral element to put into the film, because it does kind of represent Alec in the film, and also ends up representing his connection to his father, and part of the reason that he feels he needs to kind of run that race at the end of the film. I think that is such a strong element in this story, and I think it was great that Ballard saw that and added it. And it sounds like he's a filmmaker who's not afraid to kind of take input from other people and kind of put it into his films. He feels pretty confident in those sorts of decisions, as long as it's moving the whole project forward. And I think that that's just a critical one that I'm so glad is in this film.
Yeah, that's a funny point too. He said of his cinematographer that talking about Caleb Deschanel, that he has such a unique eye. So much of the film, particularly in that first half, is just Caleb's fantastic eye, that he just shoots and shoots. And he said there's a lot of the stuff in the film that I didn't even know he was shooting. He just would take the camera and go shoot some waves and go shoot some rocks, and it was just so beautiful that we ended up putting it in the film, which seems to me to be a totally authentic experience of making this movie. Just perfect.
It's funny because I heard a quote from Caleb where he says, he said they were filming some scenes for so long, like for weeks on end, because they filmed in, all the island stuff over like 3 months. He said, he would look at Carroll and go, okay, I think we got it there. He's like, no. We've only got probably 2/3 of it. We need to keep filming. And so
That's
I
really
think
funny.
between the two of them, they
ended up with a lot of extra film.
they could have made 2 of these.
That was Caleb said that was the same place I heard this was. He said people talk all about the sunsets because it seems like there are a lot of shots in the first 45 minutes where the sun is either going up or coming down, right? And he says those are not intentional. We just kept shooting until we ran out of light every day, and so it just forces you to capture a lot of sunsets when you're hanging out in Sardinia.
Absolutely, so funny.
Tough life.
Oh, so tough, so tough. But, going back to Coppola real quick, Carroll Ballard also is somebody who was in that Coppola circle. He had met Coppola when they were in school together, and Coppola went off to do the Godfather films, and Ballard was struggling, and he was kind of really in a bad place, and he was broke, and his car was going to get repossessed and all this sort of stuff. And then he got a call from Coppola, who's just like, hey, I'm trying to get this movie made. Do you want to help with it? And that's how he kind of got into this whole thing. So it's interesting how Coppola really was doing all of that, and Ballard was another person. So there you go. Using his people. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use you that way one day, Andy. Let's talk about first shot, last shot.
Let's. This is an interesting one. We've got first shot during credits and first shot after credits, and same thing at the end credits. So the first shot during the credits, it's a close-up shot of sand in this just brilliant orange sunlight as a fierce wind blows at it, eventually unburying the Bucephalus figurine that Alec's dad had given to him. And then we have the first shot of the film that actually is after the credit sequence, and this is possibly Alec's POV. We've got a bird's eye view looking off the railing of this big ocean liner ship, straight down the side of it at the water as the ship is moving through it, kind of cutting through the water.
And the last shot does a similar kind of a split. Last shot pre-credits is Alec's POV of Black's face as he looks at him in admiration. And the last shot during the credits, we actually see Alec and Black in near silhouette riding on the beach on their island as the sun is near setting, of course, because of sunsets.
Of course.
Yeah. Can I just tell you, the first shot, the first shot post-credits is... I don't want to say something is kind of hyperbolic because it's the best shot in the film. It's not, but it is the shot that most closely reaches my inner 10-year-old, because that's a perspective that it's like the first perspective that I look for whenever I'm on a boat. Even to this day, as a grown man, I always go and hang my head off the side of a boat.
Probably a lot of people do that. I love doing that. It's an interesting perspective.
I think I'm the only one who does it, Andy.
I think
that's why it's so special.
You're the only one. It's all about you.
All right. Well, I really like it, and I like it because of because of the way it connects again to the fable. The in and out of this story, I think, is a wonderful little fable, and maintains perspective while bringing us into the film. I think it works really, really well.
No, I completely agree. I think what's really interesting is if you take the outside ones that are during the credits, you have Bucephalus, and this is the story of Bucephalus, and then at the very end, you essentially have Alec and his horse, as if it's Alexander and Bucephalus on the horse on the beach. I love that, but I love that we also can really tie the other ones together as well, the ones that are after the
Alec's POV
the opening credits. Yeah, it's all about his POV. This is really a story of this boy's perspective. And I think that's just a really wonderful way to kind of keep us connected with him and kind of his world. I love it. And I have to, Pete, give an incredible shout out to whoever did the typography for the title of this film. I love the way that when the title, The Black Stallion, comes up on the screen, I love the way it looks. It is the most creative font that I have seen. It's just so beautiful, and it just seems so perfect and fitting for the story that we are going to have unfold before us. I love it.
I agree. I looked for the credit behind the poster and the typography, and I could not find it, but it's great.
Yes, it is.
Casting by Vic Ramos, Carolyn Applegate doing some uncredited casting, and Stuart Akins and Claire Walker doing the Canadian casting. They get us Kelly Reno as Alec Ramsey.
After looking at, sounds like thousands of young boys trying to find the right person to play Alec, they ended up with really the most perfect child to play this part. I mean, he is just, is Alec Ramsey. I mean, it's just amazing how well Kelly plays this character. It's just so honest. I mean, and you get that a lot from kid actors, but there's something about the way that he plays it, and probably about the way that the writers had written his lines and everything. It just feels so authentic all the way through, whether he's kind of trying to, tell his mom the truth, or he's talking to his dad about all the loot that they're splitting up, or learning how to ride from Mickey Rooney. I mean, whatever it is, he just really kind of has this sense of authenticity about him. And I mean, I find him mesmerizing. And as a kid, I totally identified with him. And now as an adult, I still just really connect with this kid.
He says he wanted to take the role initially. This is, you can imagine a kid's mind thinking this, because he really wanted to learn how to swim. That's the reason he takes this role. And he did learn how to swim because he didn't have to learn how to ride horses.
That's right. He was actually born on a ranch, and it was like he was born riding horses pretty much. I mean, he had so much experience that he could do all of the stuff on his own already. And he pretty much did all of it in the film. I think the only stuff they didn't allow him to do was some of the more intense stunt work.
Yeah, I think the only piece is the very final race when he's on horseback, and they had to really open it up and get him. He was just too small, and so riding that horse at full speed, he said the horse was too big for him to rein in. So it was tough, because you watch this movie and you think, my goodness, clearly this kid is exceptional, and clearly you want to immediately go find out what else was he in, and it wasn't much. He did the sequel, I think 3 films before he graduated high school in '84, and while he planned on acting more and got a new agent, his pickup truck was hit by an 18-wheeler, and he was taken out of the business as a result of severe injuries in that accident. After a long recovery, he'd lost his film connections and was never able to break back in. He is now a truck driver. He drives an 18-wheeler himself, just like the one that ended his career. And so he's doing his thing. I found a video from, it was probably 8 or 10 years ago, of him. He's at some sort of an event with horses, and he's being interviewed, and it's amazing. I sent it to you. Did you have a chance to peek at it?
Oh, I did. Yeah, really interesting.
It's little Alec with a longhorn mustache and a cowboy hat. Like, that's his head. It hasn't changed at all. It's really uncanny. Amazing and sort of sad story of Kelly Reno as he fell out of the business.
But boy, he had such an amazing presence even in that video. Like, everything was so positive. There was just nothing negative about anything. I mean, he just was like, he seemed to just really relish the joy that he had doing that as a kid. So I loved that.
Me too. Really touching. Mickey Rooney as Henry Daly.
Oh, Mickey Rooney. I don't think we've talked about him before, have we?
Is that true? Is that even possible? We've never talked about Mickey Rooney on this show?
Only in context of being connected to Judy Garland, like back when we talked about Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think we ever talked about him in a film. This, and then he did that. I think it was a TV movie called Bill. Those two things were like, I mean, he was indelibly burned into my brain as a kid as this kind of guy. And I just always loved Mickey Rooney as a kid. He was just like, I would see him and I would instantly want to watch whatever it was, because I just really connected with him in this character.
Totally. He was really perfect and just sort of grizzled enough, and yet totally approachable to a kid. And that's what I find just wonderful about it. Even in the sequence where, he's coming down and he's calling, and they're in the dark, and he's calling out saying, what are you doing down there? You're a thief. You're a thief. You're a thief. They're yelling at each other. That's just the kind of argument you can imagine from the perspective of a 12-year-old, 10-year-old kid. And Mickey Rooney, I think, plays it really well. That balance of wizened old curmudgeon to gentle father figure. He was just great.
It sounds like he was he would never listen to Ballard's direction. It sounds like Ballard would come up and start saying, "Well, try this." He's like, "No, I got it. I know what you're going to say. I'll just go ahead and do it. Don't worry." And he would never do anything that Ballard really wanted him to do. But I don't know. Hearing Ballard talk about him, it sounds like Ballard thought he was just a strong performer and just kind of was glad to have him on board because he really fit. I mean, this is a guy who he was in National Velvet. He was in a jockey in other projects. I mean, he's somebody who really kind of fit the bill to play this character. So it was just smart casting. And he really is that sort of kind of grizzled old grandpa character that kids connect with.
He died in 2014, but looking at his credits, 335 credits to his career. He still had there was a series. He was in American Dad, credited in 2015, and 2017 release of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he plays Mr. Lewis. And I don't know anything about that, but I find it fascinating that we've got a U.S. release. It looks like an Italian film, maybe a U.S. release or internet release in February, which would have been, I guess, Mickey Rooney's last credited performance. Haven't seen it, but now I'm super curious.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder what this one is. It definitely looks like an Italian production.
Yeah. So, Terry Garr was in this film for on the order of about 120 frames.
Now, it wasn't that short.
I'm just bitter because
she's Axton.
I'm just bitter because I love her so much.
I do too, and I think that she's so great in this. It's a really interesting mother character because it's not played too sentimental. It's played very much just like a kid would see his mom, and I thought that was really interesting. And there were some, like, the moment that really hit me this time watching the film is when Alec is sleeping outside to sleep with Black under the tree. And his mom comes out and lays a blanket on him. And then she's looking at the horse and she's like, "You are kind of a pretty horse. Thank you for saving my son. I just wish you could have, saved
his father,
his dad." Yeah. And that just broke my heart so much because that's really the only moment that you have of her kind of having a moment of grieving. And it just kind of touched me, the way that she was expressing it. It was really powerful.
Yeah, she was very sweet. I think, for me, the big sequence is when Alec has to come clean and tell her that they've had a secret. And their secret is that they've been training. And I think we're too cynical for those kinds of conversations. When the old man says to the young boy in the truck in the middle of the night, "You and me, we've got a secret, don't we? Do you understand what I'm saying? We have a secret." Like, we're just this movie is too sweet for us not to look sideways at a conversation like that anymore. So when
you mean Beavis and Butthead should not watch this movie, is what you're saying?
No, they should not. And that would have been the period when we lost all faith in humanity too. It was Beavis and Butthead, and
right.
and so when Alec has to come down and say, "This is the thing you should know. My trainer's at the door, and I'm going to ride in a match race with the fastest horses in the world. You need to know that that's going to be me." And I know I'm a kid, but we'll get through it. So they have this conversation in his bedroom that I think is one of the most powerful conversations in the film because it allows you to see her come to terms with the fact that when she lost her son on that island, she lost a piece of his youth that she can no longer reclaim. And I think she actually made that pivot perfectly. As a parent, I absolutely could see it in her twist there. Even as a young mom who had lost so much herself, I thought it was really powerful.
It really is. And Terry Garr, you said it. She's an actress who we saw a lot of in the 70s and 80s, but man, I wish that we could see more of her. I think one of these days we're going to have to do a Guilty Pleasure series because I might just have to throw in there Mom and Dad Save the World just to have another Terry Garr film. We can
Andy, 153 credits. she's got, and you're going to pick that. Let's do a series and just talk about more Terry Garr movies.
More of the good ones?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, we could
Come on,
do that
man.
too.
We could do that too. Jeez.
Yeah, there's plenty she did in the 70s and 80s that we could talk about that were fantastic. Even beyond. She's done a lot of great stuff.
And Hoyt Axton. He is Mr. Ramsey. He's Alec's father. We see him very briefly, but really cleverly portrayed in this film. And not just his performance as an actor, but the way they shoot him in this film, I thought was really great.
It was interesting, and it kind of struck me off initially when I watched it, and then I kind of like, okay, I get what they're doing here. It really is about this POV of Alex when we are looking at Hoyt Axton as he's relaying this story, and he's looking right into the camera. But not just there, even when we're seeing him when he's playing poker and stuff like that, it really is just, it's all that perspective of a boy looking at his dad.
Yeah, I really like it. The way, when we have that conversation of going through the loot and, we hear Hoyt Axton's voice, we see his hands going through these, oh, yeah, this looks like a ruby. Oh, yeah, no, I better have that, which is funny and sweet. And also, you really learn a lot about the dad and where he is in his financial situation. You can make some assumptions about the character, the way it's built that way, all without seeing the face. The only time we actually see his face is, as you say, from the perspective of Alec. I thought that was just brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clarence Muse as Snow.
This is an actor who I really don't know much about, and but he really struck me as an interesting character in this film, and I just enjoyed his presence. And then looking him up, you realize, wow, this is really kind of the first what people credit as the first African American star. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. This was kind of a very important actor and a character in context of the world of cinema. And, I think to that end, it was a really interesting choice for Ballard to kind of bring him on to play a relatively small part. But I think that Clarence Muse does infuse the character with some interesting elements that make it really interesting to watch. There's a moment where later in the film where he's sitting down chatting with Alec about the horse and everything. And he's just kind of like, I don't think you should race the horse. I think this horse is wild. It's in his soul. Whatever he's saying as he's kind of chewing on his pipe, it hit me as just really touching and very, very thoughtful. And I enjoyed the way that he did that and what he was bringing to the film. Really interesting actor who unfortunately died 4 days before the movie ended up getting released. So he never got to see it. This was his final film.
I don't have anything specific to say about any of the other human cast members. Do you?
Not the human ones.
We do have some equine contributors.
Oh, yes.
A number of them, actually. And I thought this was fascinating that there were a number of horses and still one horse got an awful lot of screen time.
Yeah, Cass-Olé was an Arabian who was really kind of in the bulk of the film. I mean, this was Black. That was that was the horse that they used for all the close-ups, for all the relationship, the bonding stuff going on between boy and horse. And I think that you can kind of tell, you get this sense that this kid is really connected with this particular animal, and there's just this beautiful bond there. And I loved that.
Cass, from the same family, Cass's first understudy was another horse who actually came in for only 2 scenes, and the most important one is the stomping of the snake, because they didn't want Cass to get, he was not going to be a good fit for stomping on the snake right in front of the boy for some reason or another, and this other horse was a better understudy. The cooler one was the swimming, because there was a contractual agreement with the owners that that Cass couldn't do the dangerous swimming, and so they brought in horses from France's Camargue region, which is a river, it's a heavy river basin, and so these horses were, they grew up swimming, and so they brought them in to do the swimming where the horses were fine in the swimming. The problem is they're all white. these horses, not a stitch of black on them, and so they had to be completely dyed, snout to tail, to actually do this scene. And in some cases, apparently, they say that you can actually see the dye running off of these horses. I couldn't pick it up. I didn't want to pick it up, so I wasn't looking all that hard for it. But anyhow, there were a number of horses to stand in, but about 80% of the screen time was Cass-Olé. So
it's a beautiful horse, and I think they did a lot of great stuff with it. And I don't know if you mentioned, but the racing stuff was all actual thoroughbreds, not the Arabian.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Also, just speaking of animals, you mentioned the snake. I think it's just kind of a funny story that that Ballard relayed about this cobra that was brought in. The Cobra Wrangler brought this snake in, and they're all looking at it like, "Wow, that looks like a really scary snake. I guess it'll be okay to do this, though. As long as it's not going to do anything." And the guy's like, "No, it'll be fine." If the kid and then Ballard is like, "And it's got its fangs removed. It's no poison anymore, right?" He's like, "No, it's just regular." And he's like, "Well, what are we going to do if how are we going to shoot a scene with a young kid?" And he's like, "Oh no, he'll be fine. If he gets bit, we'll take him to the hospital and they'll get him out, and he'll be out in a couple of days." And so they obviously had to rework some plans with the snake to figure out a better way to strategize that. That's when the panel of glass came in, and they did that.
Yeah.
Which obviously Spielberg stole later for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Brilliant filmmaking.
Yes, indeed.
Let's talk about getting it made. We already mentioned Caleb Deschanel. It was the man behind the camera. Just a beautiful eye.
He has two beautiful eyes, Pete.
Well, only one of them is really the most beautiful.
I think you're selling the other one short.
He had no camera operator, and I heard him interviewed on the Criterion interview. He says, people ask me about why I shot the film, thinking that I'm some sort of an auteur. He said, mostly I'd never worked on a big Hollywood production, and I didn't know that I could hire a camera operator. So pretty much sat down and shot the thing myself. I thought that was great.
I loved that just the people making this, it just felt like they were figuring it out as they went along, and Coppola was in this place where he could kind of give them the leeway to do so. And it sounded like they shot this for a very long time, and just were allowed time to figure things out. I can't remember if it was Deschanel or one of them talked about when they were filming up in Canada, they were working with TV crew up there for all the scenes up in the house and the neighborhood and all that. And the TV crews are used to shooting so fast and moving through stuff so quickly that they just almost couldn't, figure out heads or tails about how Ballard was shooting, because he would be changing his mind and doing this and that and not getting anything done. And then they were back the next day. And, it's just such a different way of working. So it's very funny. I'd love to have that amount of time and money to just kind of lackadaisically really think about things.
I was just thinking about your projects would be very different.
Oh, yes.
I only want to talk about locations. Well, one special reason.
Okay.
Sardinia, of course.
Yes, beautiful island.
Beautiful island in Italy. And that's where they shot obviously the island stuff. Then they came back. They spent a lot of time in Toronto. Right.
Yep.
And that was also great. And that's where all the neighborhood, the home scenes. And then they did some stuff in Rome. There's a giant
races,
the farm, the races, and then there's stuff in Rome. There's a giant tank there, and they built, at the time it was the largest tank set that they had built at that studio. But
I heard
also,
it was the Cleopatra tank, so I don't know if they built it. I think they were using one that was.
They were using one that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. But most importantly, when Alec is in the movie theater watching the newsreel, we have an external shot, and then he goes inside, and we watch him watching this newsreel. That was filmed in Astoria, Oregon, at the Liberty Theater.
Why?
That's right, Andy. My state. I have no idea. And I would think that it was that was a ridiculous mistake had I not been there myself. That's the thing. It's that one little sequence. Apparently, another sequence down the street from there, when the horse has gone running and is running down the alley and jumps over the car, that was also shot in Oregon. But that's it. Like, those are two little weird sequences that were shot in Oregon, Gearhart, Oregon, Nehalem. Like somebody was just wandering around with a camera and a horse, and they said, "Hey, we should get some extra shots."
It makes me think that they were doing some reshoots. That would be the thing that would make sense to me, is they got everything they wanted up in Toronto. Then maybe by that time it was snowing up in Toronto and they needed a place where it wasn't snowing. And they're like, where can we go? Hey, how about up here in Oregon? And so they went there just to get a couple shots that they missed or needed to redo or something like that. That would be my hunch.
Post-production editing by Robert Dalva. You know, we sometimes complain about the pacing of the films and blame it on editors. I don't have any blame for the good Robert Dalva here.
No, it's beautifully cut. It's everything just kind of fits, and I think fitting the editing in with the sound editing, I think, is kind of a smart conversation to have, because I think Alan Splett, who is the supervising sound editor here, really found just some amazing ways to use sound. And I guess that he took a sound of a toilet, like a creaky toilet that flushed funny in the studio, recorded that, and that was one of the sounds of the ship as the turbines are kind of slowly coming to a stop and as the ship is sinking. There are a lot of really unique sounds and just beautiful sounds all through the film. I mean, he would go so far as to like taping microphones to the horse when he was on the race, so you get kind of a more personal sound of how that really sounds when you're on a horse riding a race like that. And I just found it such a beautiful use of sound all through the film. I mean, it really was very connecting. And I think paired with the editing, those two things really just made the film, I mean, it really puts you right in there.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't want to lose, I don't want to skip too far over Robert Dalva. He went on from Black Stallion and edited such hits as Raising Cain. I'm saying that only a little bit sarcastically, given how I feel about it. But then Jumanji and Jurassic Park 3 and Hidalgo, Back to the Horse movies, and Captain America, the First Avenger, brings him up to Marvel.
Which is pretty interesting. I think it's great. I think it's interesting also that he ended up being the person who directed the sequel, The Black Stallion Returns.
Yeah, that's right. So interesting career trajectory there too.
Definitely.
Music, Carmine Coppola.
I love this music, Pete.
Oh,
it is
yes.
Just, the themes are just lush and they're just gorgeous, and they have this sense about them. I really like them. Just gorgeous stuff, but also some beautiful mixes of some drum work and some music that sounds much more Middle Eastern. And then also this really interesting, I don't know if I attribute this to the music or the sound design, but during the end of the race, you get this kind of drone sound that kind of slowly starts rising. It's like you don't get a score, like normally you'd have kind of that intense score as we're getting close to seeing who's going to win and if Alec is going to beat these other horses in the match race, or if or what, but you get this this drone instead of the music, and it builds the tension there in an interesting way. And I don't know if I can attribute that to Carmine or not, but I just wanted to point it out.
I like it too, and it's funny. It made me think of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, because often when they move out of that sort of trip hop trance style, there's a space in between symphonic and house where you get a lot of those sort of drone sounds, and it took me right to The Social Network. Is that weird?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. No, I can totally see that.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe more Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right there. It's that feel, the running through the woods kind of a feel at the end. It's just such an interesting choice for the music to wrap kind of such a dramatic scene. So I'm with you. It was fascinating. How did it do at award season?
There were 7 wins and 6 nominations. For the Oscars, it had 2 nominations for Best Film Editing, but our pal Dalva lost to Alan Hyme for All That Jazz, which I will say was pretty stellar
Pretty strong,
editing in
yeah.
that film. And then Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Mickey Rooney was nominated but lost to Melvin Douglas for being there, which we've talked about on the show before. And Melvin's pretty great in that too. So those are tough losses. I'd have a hard time picking if I had to. There also was a Special Achievement Oscar to Alan Splett for his sound editing. I don't know why they chose to do a Special Achievement Award instead of just an Oscar, but I think there might not have been enough in the category or something that year, but they wanted to award him anyway. So anyway, all the rest of the nominations and wins seem to focus on the score, the cinematography, and the editing, though Ballard did win the LA Film Critics Association New Generation Award. Clearly, they're kind of nodding to the new generation of filmmakers coming up.
But Deschanel didn't get even a nomination?
Not at the Oscars. I mean, he got some other nominations and wins in some other different awards, but not the Oscars.
Well, that hurts my heart. Yeah, that's wrong.
Well, here, now that you asked that, let me tell you the 5 films that were nominated for Best Cinematography in 1979, and tell me if you think this would fit in over any of those.
Okay.
Apocalypse Now, Vittorio Storaro.
Yeah, that's
definitely should be there. That was the winner. All That Jazz, Giuseppe Rotuno, I would say definitely should be there.
Yeah.
The Black Hole, Frank V. Phillips. I remember so little of that.
Yeah, I think that I could pass on that.
I think it probably is nominated because it was space, it was black hole. They did some interesting things, as I recall, when they go through the black hole. So that would be my hunch for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Kramer versus Kramer, Nestor Almendros.
Nope.
I would not call that a movie that I would watch for cinematography.
Exactly. I would put this in there for either Black Hole or Kramer versus Kramer. What's number 5?
1941, William A. Fraker. It's not one of my favorite Spielberg films. I can't recall much about the cinematography, so I can't speak to it. I know that Spielberg really does like gorgeous cinematography in his films, so I'd like to think that maybe it did deserve to be there. If anything, I would pull Kramer versus Kramer out and put the Black Stallion in.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go, Andy.
Rewrite history again.
Yeah, we did that again. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So there were some sequels and remakes.
We've talked about the sequel already, which came out in 1983. That was The Black Stallion Returns. There was a TV series on from 1990 to 93 called The Adventures of the Black Stallion. Mickey Rooney reprised his role. And in 2003, there was an IMAX prequel called The Young Black Stallion. And all of these, Pete, were actually based on some of the books. Did you know that this was a series of books? It wasn't just a book.
Amazing. And no, I didn't. Especially, I mean, I had a sense that there was a book before we started this. I didn't know when I first saw the movie that it was an adaptation. But this is a heck of a series.
There were a lot. Farley wrote 20 books in his Black Stallion series, which he stretched out from 1941 all the way to 1983 is when he wrote the last of his 20. And then with his son, Stephen Farley, he co-wrote The Young Black Stallion in 1989. And then his son continued the Young Black Stallion series after his father passed away and also wrote some additional Black Stallion novels. I think that's so interesting that there are so many Black Stallion and Young Black Stallion novels out there. And I never knew. It's like I had no idea that they were out there.
One of the things I think is so fascinating about this, that Farley started writing the stories that ended up making the first novel in 1931, and he was like 16, right? He was young.
Wow.
And look at what's going on in the world, like what his worldview is. He is a horse-loving young guy in Brooklyn, and he is 2 years out of, 1929. The Great Crash is there. He's really trying to figure out what's going on in the world around him and the struggles and watching his family struggle. And this story comes to his mind, and he starts writing these stories. I mean, this is a Depression era story if there ever was one. Even as it was set in 46, I think, is when the movie was ultimately set. But the genesis of this story is 15 years before that, and I think that's an important thing to note as you watch this movie. The cultural connection, the relevance of the film is from a much darker place for certainly the community that he was living in.
Really interesting.
And you already made note of the typography of the title, but the poster.
The original poster that came out when the film was released in 1979 is just a gorgeous poster, and you just don't get posters like this. It's kind of this worn, it looks like just an old paper, and then it's got this, it's like an inked picture of Black's head, and it's just like squiggles and ink, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it's just such an iconic poster. I've always loved it. I would love to have that like hanging on my wall. I just think it's such an incredible piece of art. And I don't know who did it, but I sure would love to give them a pat on the back.
You should. Yeah, that's another one. You can find it in our links in the show notes. Head over to the Internet Movie Poster Awards, IMPawards.com. We got a link directly to that entry, as we do for all the films that we do. And you can see just that poster. That's the only one that's in their catalog for the Black Stallion. But it's beautiful. How'd it do in the box office?
On the success of his films, like we've talked about, Coppola was able to finance this movie through his production company, American Zoetrope. They put in $2.7 million or $8.9 million in today's dollars into the movie to get it made, which it seems like a relatively small budget that somehow these guys managed to do quite a bit with. I mean, hearing that they shot for like a year or whatever, that they really stretched the money. Because of Coppola's financial troubles on Apocalypse Now, however, he ended up not being able to distribute the film as he was hoping to do so, and he had to sell the distribution rights, as you said earlier, to United Artists, who happily jumped on board, giving Coppola the cash he needed to rebuild his sets after the hurricane destroyed them. That being said, United Artists still kind of put it on the shelf for a couple years until Coppola finally had to use his clout to get it released. The Black Stallion was released Wednesday, October 17th, 1979, the same day as Tom Selleck's and Jerry Reed's comedy Concrete Cowboys, and a few days before the releases of And Justice for All and Lee Marvin's Avalanche Express. It had a nice slow build and definitely found its audiences, earning $37.8 million domestically, or just over $125 million in today's dollars. I couldn't find anything on international figures, but with these, it looks like the movie earned its investors 14 times what they spent to get it made, with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $984,000. Talk about a solid start for Ballard.
Sorry you had to sell the rights, Francis. That sucks.
Ouch.
All right. Andy, I think it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
We're going to start over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You can head over there, swipe over in the show notes, and tap on the Flickchart link, and that'll jump you over to the Flickchart entry, where you can add it to your very own collection. Let's see where it stacks up on ours.
All right, first up, the Black Stallion, or our Oh Brother block, Pete. Oh Brother, where art thou? It is an easy one for me, the Black Stallion.
It's an easy one for me too, Andy. The Black Stallion it is.
All right, next up, the Black Stallion, or Trading Places. Definitely the Black Stallion.
The Black Stallion.
The Black Stallion, or Aliens.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Black.
Here.
Yeah, I gotta go with Aliens.
Aliens is a tough one to get over. The Black Stallion, or LA Confidential.
Oh, LA Confidential.
Yeah, I have to go with LA Confidential.
Yeah.
The Black Stallion, or My Neighbor Totoro. Another great children's film.
This makes me pained. I'm going to say Black Stallion.
I'm saying the Black Stallion. I think a lot of that is just because it's been in my life for such a long period of time. The Black Stallion. Oh, here's some nice Coppola action. The Black Stallion, or The Godfather, Part 2.
Probably the Black Stallion for me.
Yeah, me too.
If it were Godfather Part 1, you never know whose head ends up in the bed, is all I'm saying.
That's the Black Stallion's head.
Now we know. The truth is out there.
The Black Stallion, or Moneyball.
Moneyball.
For me, it's the Black Stallion. We're going to have to flip, Pete.
So
I'm sorry.
Moneyball. All right, here we go.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Rock. Ugh.
I'm sorry. The Black Stallion or No Country for Old Men.
Black
I have
Stallion.
to go with No Country.
All right, here we go.
And here we go. 1,
2,
3.
Scissors.
Ooh.
There we go.
Slicing me up.
Now we're even.
Well, there you go. The Black Stallion races to number 58 out of 306.
All right.
I'd say that's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive, Andy, for a G-rated film made in 1979. Think about it. This is the kind of movie that is just not made anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that Ballard was talking to, I think he said he was talking to like a distributor or a head of a studio or somebody who's just like, that movie was a fluke. That movie would never happen today, and it was a fluke that it made any money back then. It's just one of those things that somehow tapped into people's consciousnesses, and they really liked it. And I mean, it's there for me, so I will always love this film.
What's this do for your Letterboxd review? Our Letterboxd pals, letterboxd.com/thenextreel.
This is a 5-star film for me, and I like it quite a bit. G-rated
film, 1979, and it's a 5-star liker today. That's right. That's pretty cool, Andrew.
Hear, hear.
It's one for me too. 5 stars with a heart.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome,
I had a blast. I had a blast, even though the tonal shift of the film halfway down the middle, I know drives some folks a little bit crazy. I've been perusing Amazon reviews, and well, they're delicious. But generally, there is some consternation about the fact that this feels like 2 films. I'm okay with that. I think I've made my peace with it, and I enjoy both parts of this film very, very much. But I understand that's where some criticism lies. I think that the overall, just the art of the film, the visual of the film, the camera of the film, the performances from our main actors and the work with the horse, it just allows me to overlook all of these minor sort of structural issues and just enjoy the ride.
Yep, I totally agree.
All right. Where do we go from here in our series on the good Melissa Mathison?
We're going to be talking about the next film that she wrote, which was for Steven Spielberg, and that is E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
Wow, what a run.
Yes.
Nice. Well, I look forward to that. It has been, I've actually seen this one more recently, probably in the last 2 years. We've watched E.T.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm really looking forward to digging into it. I don't think I've ever watched it all that closely. So,
which one are you going to be watching? Are you going to watch the re-release that Spielberg did, like, I don't know, in the late 2000s was it the late 2000s or was it the late 99s when he fiddled with it and removed the guns and all that sort of stuff? Or are you going to go back and watch I think he finally re-released the original, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I'm looking right now. It's the one with the guns. Not the radios.
If it's the one with the guns, then it's the original.
It's either the original or the re-release that was fixed and ungunned and regunned.
Regunned, right.
Yes.
And that's the one where Elliot's brother still goes out trick-or-treating as a terrorist.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of interesting choices made back
Yes.
then.
That's right. Did he do anything else though to fix it? Like, was it? I can't remember. Was it like? Was there any recoloring? Was there anything else done to the film when he put the guns back in?
When he put the guns back in, I think that he was just making the original. I mean, other than just restoring it, I mean, I don't think they went back in to digitally change things. I think that was only in the other version, where they have the scene of E.T. in the bathtub and they have more of an animated E.T. running and jumping through the bushes and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
we're not going to speak of that. I assume you're not watching that version. You're going to watch your original Laserdisc version.
Oh, I'm going back to VHS.
Well, I can't wait. I think it's a good film, and I can tell you my family's looking forward to that one. So this will be a good Friday night movie night.
Yes, it will.
Until then, Andy, I think you know the drill. I gotta go to bed.
Well, I can't sleep in my bed. It's just way too uncomfortable. So I'm going to go outside and crash on the ground next to Black.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Again, a rich selection of critical reviews of this film on Amazon.com. Where did you end up?
Well, I went with the 2-star, Pete.
Oh, 2-star. Okay.
2-star, yeah. I was going to actually do Roger B's, who gave it 2 stars, and his review was not watched. But thinking about that, I'm like, well, I can't really use that review because you didn't watch it, Roger. So I went with History Buff's review that says, the movie was not what we expected. It was anticlimactic, and we lost interest after they spent what seemed like forever running up and down the beach.
Wow.
So there you go. History Buff.
History
Apparently
Buff
does not like taking time to explore things.
Not enough history on the beach is what I'm reading out of that one. More
right.
history, less beaches. Mine is one that is it's a spiritual review, and we haven't had a spiritual take on a film that we have reviewed on this show in some time, possibly ever. Here it is. It is a 1-star out of 5. The title is Not for Christians. And the review states, the 1-star rating is because God's name is taken in vain. Third commandment.
Well, yeah.
Now you know.
Watch out.
I didn't notice.
I missed it apparently too.
So I don't know if that changes your Letterboxd review at all, but I'll patiently await that post.
You keep waiting.
Thanks, Amazon.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.